But then again, back then, he could see where he was going, for he was following in Japan's footsteps. What they failed to recognize back then was the depth of the impact of our system's emphasis on something in Confucianism that has the potential to go against the collectivist grain very severely. Meritocracy, originally part of a larger system of advocated Confucian beliefs. Meritocracy is the only tenet of Confucianism that is rewarded by our capitalist system. With the advent of globalization, this perversion only becomes stronger. People, in an effort to distinguish themselves from their peers, will naturally pursue their own ends with determination, will consequently be fierce competitors, and will of course flaunt their success when they finally achieve it. And if it's not obvious by now, yes, be more individualistic too. Things like being hardworking or honorable do not necessarily come into play. It's simply a matter of who's on top, never mind how he or she got there. The government claims that their position on meritocracy has been severely misunderstood, but it is really them who have severely underestimated globalization. In hindsight, the trends observed in the 80s are no surprise at all. This is not unique to Singapore, and is in fact being similarly faced in other economies, developing and developed. Orientalist scholars distill Confucianism to the following values: hard work, self-discipline, emphasis on education, familial orientation, and collectivism. Now, all of the above values do have Western equivalents, except for this last one, which supposedly inhabits the core of Confucian political philosophy. As Roderick McFarquhar wrote in The Economist, Confucianism was the philosophical justification of government by a benevolent bureaucracy under a virtuous ruler, which is then reciprocated by his subjects with loyalty and obedience. In other words, it referred to East Asians' mutual acceptance of their various unequal positions within society, implying that authoritarianism is good for economic growth. But this ideological emphasis on submission to authority and obedience means that it offers very little advice to Lee and other believers about conflict resolution. It is capable of painting two very clear pictures for him. One, that of a blissful utopia of mutual respect, where a virtuous, capable, and benevolent ruler governs his loyal, grateful subjects with the deft touch of unfailing impartiality. The other is a hellish vision of enraged, revolting subjects taking arms against a tyrannical, corrupt ruler who is exploiting them. Every other possibility in between these two extremes frequently goes ignored by Singaporean rulers, who assume that to allow greater freedoms would cripple the nation with constant riots and demonstrations. Furthermore, this conclusion conveniently ignores the political circumstances under which Singapore as a nation was born. Look, we had to put up with 140 years of colonization. Those years gave our population a veiled idea as to what democracy was about, and how desirable it should be. Contrast this with America, which was forged by revolution for independence, by rebels who were sick of the excesses of monarchy. For them, the whole point of independence was democracy itself. For us, the British left, and we got kicked out of the Malaysian Federation shortly after that. It was very different, to say the least. Lastly, the periodic ISD sweep operations in the years after independence wiped out much of the opposition, and instilled fear in the populace, a palpable collective fear that led to a widespread belief that the vote was not secret, and that the government was capable of punishing those who voted against it. This is an urban legend that lives on even today, despite repeated attempts by parties on both sides of the political divide to quash it. All these qualifications are conveniently sidestepped when Singapore's ruling party discusses Confucianism. It is hoped that this episode helps bring the engineered nature of our political evolution into even sharper relief, so that any future attempts to pass it off as the natural order of things fall even flatter on their faces.